I know a friend of mine heard, "Well done, good and faithful servant," when she met Jesus. I'm Pam Lundell, and Naomi Anderson selflessly helped other widows while on this earth through a nonprofit, and her son Matthew Blades shares his mom's legacy on the latest edition of A Widow's Heart.
That organization gave my mom so much purpose and direction, and it was literally the greatest use of her skill set.
Hey, welcome to another episode of A Widow's Heart. I'm Pam Lundell, longtime broadcaster in Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and also now a podcaster for the last year and a half because I have a widow's heart. My husband died in 2005, and even though that was so many years ago, I've been walking along widows ever since. And today, little different this time. My guest is Matthew Blades. First of all, Matthew, welcome to A Widow's Heart.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be with you.
Oh, it's just great to have you. And we're doing things a little bit differently because we are going to honor an amazing widow who happens to be your mom, Naomi Faye Anderson. And she was a friend of mine. So we talk about Widow Might, the nonprofit, a lot on A Widow's Heart, based here in the Twin Cities. And your mom, Naomi, was an amazing big part of that organization as a leader and walking alongside widows because she herself lost her husband and you lost your dad. Can you tell us when that happened?
Yeah, that was back in 1996, just a couple of days before I think it was going to be her 46th birthday. He was only 47 years old. So yeah, it's like you, it's been a number of years since that incident.
And she really definitely had a heart for widows. And sadly, I say was because Naomi passed away kind of suddenly recently on April 1st. And I was able to attend Naomi's homegoing service, which is exactly what it was. It was so filled with love and joy and most of all, Jesus. Matthew, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all, so people know a little bit about you?
Sure. Yeah, no, my mom and I go back to 1973. That's when she had me, and we had a pretty full life growing up in a military family, moving from town to town. Mostly spending our time in Minnesota, which is where I was born and raised, with the exception of a short stint in St. Louis is where we lived there for a little while. But grew up in Minnesota, and I got into radio broadcasting similar to your path back in 1994. I attended a little technical institute there in Minneapolis called Brown. Now I think they call it Brown College.
I worked at Brown Institute back in the day.
What did you do there?
Like in the 80s. I was in the placement department.
That's
I put
so
people
cool.
like you in Grundy Center, Iowa, and Wolf Point, Montana for their very first radio jobs. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I remember all of that so vividly. In fact, I give speeches all the time now, and I talk about how when I was in my last class at Brown Institute and the instructor was like, all right, where do you want to go next? What are you hoping to make? What are you hoping to do? And everybody in my class was like, I think I'm going to just go do farm reports in Iowa or some small town. And I was like, you guys are crazy. Does anybody else not want to go out here and make like $100,000 and work in a big city and do big things? And so I ended up doing that. And I got into my radio and television career at the ripe age of 19 years old.
Fabulous.
And did my first stint at a radio station some of your audience might know up in St. Cloud called KCLD, 104.7 KCLD. That was my first job. I was just telling my kids about it last night because they both now have part-time jobs, and they make more than I did at my first radio job back in the early 90s, by a mile, which is so wild. But a couple of years into my radio career, we lost my dad, and that really put me into kind of hyper mode. I drilled way down on my career and really doubled down on that effort. And hindsight's 2020. It's always interesting to kind of look back and see what if anything could have been different. But the bottom line is, after that event, I left home. And I just saw it as my mission to go and do everything I possibly could to better my life, to make a really healthy, amazing career. And I didn't look back, and I didn't stop until 2021, just a couple of years ago, when I walked away from my profession.
Yeah, wow. That's a long, amazing career. It's
It
incredible.
was good.
We're
27
talking
years was good.
We're talking with Matthew Blades, who is the son of Naomi Anderson, who passed away, and she was an integral part of the nonprofit called Widow Might here in Minnesota, but it's really kind of a national organization right now. Can you tell me, how old were you when your dad passed away, Naomi?
So I was 23. Yeah, I was 23 when Dad died. She would have been 46, and then we have a brother and a sister, and so they're each 2 years younger than each other. So my brother's 2 years younger, my sister's 4 years younger than me.
Tell me, from your perspective, what did you see when your mom lost her husband, her soulmate? I know she loved him so much.
Yeah, it was a really, really tough and tragic time. If and I see no reason to sugarcoat anything or to mince words. It was a very, very difficult time for our family, as it is for a lot of folks. And over the years, I've seen this play out a number of different ways for different families. And to be honest, I wish we would have done it a little bit different back in the day. I think, and you may have experienced this too, Pam, but when you lose somebody like mom or dad, there's a real tendency for things to get super messy. And we were no exception to that. There was some conflict. That's probably putting it nicely. There's some conflict with my dad's family and my mom that wasn't very pleasant to go through, and wasn't very pleasant to deal with. And I know in my heart that really put a wedge between us for a number of years, just because they couldn't seemingly figure that piece out. And what's interesting is, later in life, and as a matter of fact, you keep mentioning my mom, who passed away on April 1st, and one of the 2 or 3 people that was by her bedside the most was one of my dad's sisters. So there was some reconciliation over the years. Things worked out over the years. But I think right after that moment, it was very, very complicated. And as a 23-year-old young man, I just couldn't wait to get out of it. I just didn't want to be in that space. I didn't want to see it, taste it, touch it. I didn't want anything to do with it. And that's probably about as honest as I can be about that situation.
Yeah, and we really appreciate that. When my husband passed away, he died of an accidental drug overdose, and I was a younger widow, and his family acted like we were divorced, and just no communication. So it's messy. It does get messy. It's not, it's difficult enough to lose your spouse, but then to have all of these other things happening. What did you see your mom do as she supported you? She not only lost her husband, but her children lost their father.
Yeah. And again, I kind of go back to what I just said. So my sister was, I think, 17 or 18 at the time. And so she was still finishing high school. I'm not really sure what Tim was doing in that space for those couple of years. That's a little blurry for me. But I left, and so I didn't really have a front row seat to the way that she was taking care of things. As a matter of fact, I took on the attitude of, I'm going to take care of myself, and I just sort of ran in that direction. And I would say that my mom only knew how to be a mom. That's really the truth. Like when she was taking care of other people, that's when she was excelling, and that's when she felt the best. That's when she felt the most useful, the most needed, the most value. And you know how it goes. I mean, when your kids get older, they need you very differently. My son's going to be 18 next in a couple of months,
wow.
And he doesn't need me like he did when he was 12 and when he was 8. And I have to evolve that relationship. That's not on him to do. And my mom and I would kind of have that little equal rub kind of coming up, where it was like, I'm okay, but she didn't know how to stop being a mom, and I get it. That's what her job was. Right? It's so hard. And I give her so much grace, so much appreciation for the way that she loves to take care of other people. And if there's a message that I thought about conveying today to you, to your audience, to the group of people that listen to this podcast, it's that I think when things like this happen, we have a tendency to just want to pour into other people all the time, and we really forget to take care of ourselves.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's incredible. What an incredible statement. She had such a big heart, and I just see her laughing. I see her beautiful face and her laughter. And like I said, at that service, her love for Jesus was just so apparent. And how did she share her faith with you as you were growing up?
So we were in church from the time that I can remember. That was always a very, very big piece. And I think you'll remember at her service, if I were to look out into that crowd, I could pretty much split them up into three groups. It was like family, church friends, widowmite friends. And really that was that if there were a major cross, that's exactly what it would be. And so we were in church all the time. Our closest friends were all part of that church. Many of them were at her service, and she was my Sunday school teacher. I think I may have mentioned in my eulogy that I was mad at her because when we were kids, I had to do this thing called Awana.
Yes.
And all of my friends were doing like the real version of Cub Scouts, right? And so they were like going out and camping and all this other stuff and tying knots and doing all this cool stuff. And I was memorizing Bible verses for badges. And I always poked at her a little bit for that. But I'm not sad it happened, right? You and I both know it all shakes out exactly the way it's supposed to. And it's just our job to get the heck out of the way. And so, but I'm really, really happy about that. When I think about my mom and the foundation that she gave me around faith, it gave me a really, really awesome starting point for my life. And I'm grateful about that.
Mm-hmm. And it's biblical too. I mean, it talks about just raising up your children in the way they should go, and they and God will take care of the rest.
That's it. It's not my job to figure this out. And I wish I would have figured, and I, like a lot of people, Pam, I wish I would have figured that out in my 20s and 30s and right. Just stop forcing things so much. But, with age comes wisdom.
We'll be back with more from Matthew Blades on A Widow's Heart. Here at the podcast, we're grateful for the support of Wings for Widows. It's a Minnesota nonprofit that helps widows tackle finances after they've lost a loved one free of charge. That's widows and widowers. Wings for Widows offers one-on-one coaching with a financial planner. According to the organization, only 14% of widows were making financial decisions by themselves before their spouse died. The founder, Chris Bentley, said the need for their service is definitely high. Again, you can learn more. Contact Wings for Widows at wingsforwidows.org. I'm talking with Matthew Blades, my guest on A Widow's Heart, who is the son of Naomi Anderson, who was very integral as a part of the nonprofit called Widowmite, which I helped found so many years ago. And I remember,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's a radio thing, actually, because my late husband, John, was also in radio in the Twin Cities. And he passed away in August of 2005. We were working at a station playing big band and Ella Fitzgerald and Michael Bublé and taking senior citizens on sold out tours. I'm like, this is how we're going to retire. This is going to be great. But it didn't work out that way. And our station
other
was
plans.
Sold. Yeah. And I guess what is it? You can make your plans, but the Lord determines your steps is how it goes. So that just, totally pulled the rug right out from under me. And just a couple months later, I was looking for a job, and I went to several commercial radio stations and secular stations, and never thought Christian radio. I was a Christian, but that's where God led me. And then all of a sudden, so widows started calling me on social media or texting or whatever, saying, we know your story and that you can get up and go to work, even though we know, there are bad times too. I can do it. So we got a group of widows together, and I'm trying to, I don't think Naomi was in the original one. She was pretty close. We just went out to dinner, brought pictures of our late husbands, talked about them. We laughed, we cried. And that was kind of the beginnings, the grassroots of Widowmite. Our founder and two founders, we got together in 2012 and then formed the nonprofit called Widowmite. So that's how it started. Isn't that crazy?
It's awesome. And I said it, in my eulogy, but that organization gave my mom so much purpose and so much. There's no other word for it. It just gave her so much purpose and direction, and it was literally the greatest use of her skill set. You couldn't draw up a better position for my mom to fall into, just because of the things that she was good at. She was good at getting things done. She seemingly knew how to navigate every system on planet Earth. If she didn't know the answer, she sort of knew a way to get around it and figure it out and find it. And it was just awesome to kind of watch her fulfill her role in that space, because, it's been a big philanthropy. Has been a huge part of my life, as you well know. When you get into radio, one of the things that a lot of folks who are really invested will do is they will get to a city, they will latch onto causes that are important to them. They will find their tribe and their people, and they will help that mission be seen through. And I was lucky enough to find that at just like 23 years old, I found out that I loved working with kids in children's hospitals. And so I started going down that road, and then that led to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then, eventually creating my own foundations and all of these other things that have happened along the way. And so for my mom to be able to find that little ounce and piece of purpose in her life was spectacular, because I think that, when I reflect on her life and I reflect on the last, 25 years of her life, it had to have been hard sometimes. It had to have been really difficult to just be by herself and to not have those kids around you. Like, I know her daughter and her son lived there, but they were adult children and they had their own families and their own lives, and those two things don't always intersect. And it had to have been tough. It had to have been tough for her. So to have something like this and to have that group of people like you guys, it was incredible for her.
Well, Naomi was a leader, as I mentioned, of one of our Widow Connect groups. They never sat still. She was just all over the place, and so much fun. Yeah. And that whimsical little glint in her eye, it just inspired so many people, and I think brought hope to so many. And I know that when she got to heaven, it was a big hug from Jesus, and he said, "Well done, good and faithful servant." I absolutely know that. And I want to go back to her service, because it just blew me away. Got this beautiful picture of her right here. And one of the songs, I was like, amen and amen. It was "I'll Fly Away" by Etta James. And I believe you were the pastor said, and you can get up and dance if you want.
I did. Yeah, I did. I said, if you feel like you need to get up and move, because it's such a joyful song. And I listen to it most days now, and it's kind of my time with my mom. And so when I'm driving to and from, if I ever need to get pumped up, I throw in Etta James, "I'll Fly Away." And what's really the coolest thing about that, Pam, is that song was never one on my radar. My mom had never talked about it before, and I didn't find out about it until the very end when we looked. And she was so incredible on so many levels and took care of us in so many different ways. But she planned out that funeral. Like, there were so many aspects of that funeral that were exactly what my mom wanted, and it was in that directive that I found the song that she wanted us to play at the funeral, which was "Amazing Grace" and "I'll Fly Away."
Yeah, "I'll Fly Away" by Etta James. Never heard that version. I thought, what in the world? And then, of course, we're this big church full of, Scandinavians, and there might have been maybe a little head nod, but there, no one was freaking out.
That was not a group.
Busting a move.
Yeah, that was not a group of people that was going to get up and dance, but that's all right. Their hearts were happy. Their hearts were happy.
And then it was so poignant, too, because the Gerber brothers, who are incredible gospel singing duo brothers, and Naomi's brothers sang "Amazing Grace."
And a beautiful version of it, too.
An overused word. It was amazing. They did such a good job. It was such a joyful service, because when someone is a believer and they're in heaven, and what Naomi left was, I want you to know that you need to know where you're going, too. I felt that message. And your mom was also a blogger. She really encouraged people with her blog. And I am looking at her last blog, and what it was about.
Chills up my spine. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to tell our listeners, I'm looking at a big stairway to heaven with big lights and clouds and a big stairway. And it says, will we recognize each other when we meet in heaven? What? Yes. And she goes on to say, and this was hard for me to talk about and learn about too. Will we recognize our spouse when we meet in heaven? According to scriptures in 1 Corinthians, it says, for now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part that I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And then in Mark 12, this is a tough one. When the dead rise, they will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like angels in heaven. And it's kind of difficult to understand. We, not knowing our spouses or children in the earthly sense, but we will know. But Jesus has it all taken care of. In John 16, it says, I have said these things to you that in me you may have peace, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So in her blog and in scripture too, it's like, yeah, we're going to know our families. We're going to know our husband, but it's going to be way better than even on earth. And that was her prolific last blog talking about going to heaven.
It's, of course now, and you've probably done this with your late husband, but you reflect on the last 6 months, the last 3 months, the last 90 days or whatever. And with my mom, all of this came out of really nowhere. We didn't have any signs or signals of. There was some things happening behind the scenes, like memory lapses and there was a couple of little things. We were like, is that, or are we just getting older? Kind of a vibe, but I'm certain of it. My mom she knew what was happening. I think she knew exactly what was going down. She made it a point to come and visit us the last couple of months that, she was healthy enough to do so. And I remember on our last visit when she was here in December, and my wife and I just kind of looked at each other one night.
And you're in Phoenix, right?
And we're in Phoenix. Yeah. She had come down to spend Christmas with us, and we looked at each other and we said, something's going on. Like there's something there where it's just starting to look a little bit different. And it was more than just, her health wasn't great or something like that. There was just something. And the way she was just preparing all of us and getting all of us ready for her exit, to know my mom was to know that she just orchestrated everything. And I really think that she was doing that exact same thing as she was headed out and getting ready for her next chapter.
Well, it's just like her, isn't it?
It's
taking care of people in the beginning of her life, in the middle of her life, then just leading and loving on those widows, and then just letting you guys know, kind of like it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And here's what we want to do. Can I share the poem on the back of the program?
Please do.
I love that. It says, blessed are mothers. Blessed are mothers who did without for us, they will be rewarded. Blessed are mothers who lost sleep when we were sick, they shall find rest. Blessed are mothers who taught us how to pray, they will share God's kingdom. Blessed are mothers who comforted us, they shall be comforted. Blessed are mothers who taught us right from wrong, they will know justice. Blessed are mothers who taught us the Christian life by example, they will live forever. Blessed are mothers who shared with us the meaning of peace, they shall know peace. Blessed are mothers who taught us the importance of loving God and each other, they shall see God. And your beautiful mom, Naomi, is in the presence of God and the angels, and we have no idea what it's like, but it's way better than what's going on here.
We're certain of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're certain of that. Yeah.
Well,
no, listen, I said it in my service that my mom and I didn't always see faith the exact same way, but when we really think about it, we weren't far from each other either. We really weren't. And the fact that she was such a believer and knew exactly where she was headed and exactly what it looked like, it made the transition easier. And I really think, like you, I've lost several people along the way, and the ones where you're just not sure where what's next for them, those are the ones that don't sit well. But when somebody is that strong a believer and you know that they know exactly where they're going, like I said, my eulogy, how could you be anything but happy for her that she gets to go and live all of this out exactly as she has dreamed it since the time she was a little girl? I don't want to get in the way of that. And I don't want to be sad about that either. That's happy.
Yes. Amen. My goodness. Matthew Blades. We are honoring his mom, Naomi Anderson. She was a widow, but that was a small part of her life. But her love and her just faith in God and faith in others and wanting to help just shone through. And I just am so glad that you're here today, that we could just thank Naomi. And somehow I know in heaven, she's like, oh, get out of here.
She's loving this, Pam, so much.
Shopping.
Yeah, no, I think she's just loving this. She's talked about you and with the highest regard for so many years, and for you and I to be able to sit down and do what we know how to do, which is get behind a microphone and talk, and for that conversation to be about my mother it's incredible for me. I'm fighting back tears over here the last 28 minutes as we talk about her, because it's only been a couple of months since she's been gone, and there's still a lot of things playing out, as you well know, and we're still wrapping things up and all of that. And so it doesn't feel like it's the total end yet. We're still sort of in it.
Yeah, you definitely are until you're reunited in heaven. That's for sure. Because as your mom
maybe
said in her
right.
blog, we're going to know each other.
Yeah.
and God
good
said that
stuff.
too. Well, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I do. I want to say this because I think it's really important. When we lose people we love, we go through a lot of different emotions, and we sequence through a lot of I would have, I could have, I should have. And when I talk to people about death, because I put on these grief relief retreats here in Phoenix, it's one of the things that I've been called to do, is to help other people through their grief.
Tell me about that.
And if there's one word that I hear more than any other word, it's this word of regret. And people talk about, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have done this. And what I really want to communicate today is that if you still have an opportunity to say the things that you know you need to say, today is about as good a day as you're going to get. And there's nothing wrong, and I'm sincere about this. I want everybody who's listening to us right now, when this podcast is over, I want you to think about that person that you know you need to say something to, good or bad, it doesn't matter. And I want you to text them, and I want you to say, in the next couple of days, I'd like to have a really meaningful conversation with you and set the stage for something serious to take place. And even if it's just a call and tell them how many different ways they profoundly impacted your life, or even if it's difficult and you need to work through some hurts of your past to make sure that the future doesn't carry all of that crap with it. There's never going to be a better day than today to rekindle with those people and put the thing back on the tracks, because you won't regret that for a moment in your life. When this person leaves the earth, you will never have a chance to put it back on the tracks the way you want to. And so if you have time today is the best opportunity you have. And I'm really encouraging you to just grab it, as uncomfortable as it may be, as squirmy as you may get when you're making that phone call. You're never going to wake up and regret doing that.
Amen, my friend. Your grief group, how can we learn more about that?
So we put these retreats on in Phoenix, Arizona, and we have details on my website, which is called learnfrompeoplewholivedit.com. And our next one, it gets really hot here in Arizona, so we don't have another one coming up until the fall, because the retreats are filled with ceremony, and they're filled with equine therapy, which is the horse therapy.
Yes.
And we do a river ceremony where we're outside. And so there's a lot of elements where we're in the elements. And so we can't quite do it when it's 120 degrees. But we will be working on our next date. It'll probably be sometime late October, early November for our retreat. And you can sign up on my website on the email list, and then you'll be notified when we put the next one together.
Okay. And the website again is?
learnfrompeoplewholivedit.com, which is the name of my podcast that I started.
And the wonderful organization Widow Might that Naomi, who we've been paying tribute to today, a wonderful woman, a mom, sister, and now angel in heaven. And she was a shepherd with Widow Mite. You can learn more about that group at widowmite, MIGHT.org. So, Matthew, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this.
I'm Pam Lundell. Thanks again for listening to this episode. You can learn more at widowmite, MIGHT.org. And you can share your story if you'd like to comment on the podcast, or maybe share a bit of what you're going through, and you could be featured on a future podcast here at A Widow's Heart. If you go to wowgod.com, scroll down, find my podcast, and there's a little red button there. It's a recording button. Use your phone, because you have a microphone on your phone, and press that, and you have up to 10 minutes to record your story, maybe what you're going through, what you've learned, maybe how God has worked in your life through this very difficult journey, I know, because I have been there. Thank you so much. Until next time, I'm Pam Lundell for A Widow's Heart. Again, a part of the Wow God Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts, and at wowgod.com.